skill issue.
What's going on, guys? LoganJYA here, and I'm sure you read the title. I did betray Drytrons at the Edison Regionals. So before you dislike this video, just hear me out. The list I played was still pretty freaking good. We ended up 23rd place, so not the greatest. We were one win away in the end from the top cut, which was really frustrating. Technically top 32, but we know it doesn't really count at the regionals. But hey man, the list still performed pretty well. I think we, you know what, let me leave it to future Logan here, and we'll go through the entire deck in depth, and we'll explain the matchups, we'll explain what worked, what didn't, what we would change. But yeah man, we played Eldlich. It was interesting. We invoked the wrath of old school Stephen J. Trifanowski, and it worked out pretty good. So I hope you enjoy this video. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and leave any of your questions in the comments down below. I'm happy to field them. Let me know what you think of the list and if you have any questions. So without further ado, let's get to it. What's going on, guys? LoganJYA here, and I have got my top 32 deck from the Edison Regionals, and yes, it's clearly not Drytron. As I said in the beginning, I did betray Drytrons for this event, and I'm going to talk about why I ended up playing this way throughout the video, so be sure to watch until the end. But hey man, Eldlich is pretty good too, I'm not gonna lie. And you don't have, so here's the thing, I'll start off by saying this. I thought that I was going to be saving myself brain power by playing this deck and be like, oh dude, Drytron combos I don't feel like thinking, I'm not ready to deal with the Despia, the brandeds, let's just play somewhere I don't have to think so hard. I was wrong. You actually have to think kind of hard about when to flip trap cards, as stupid as that sounds. And then before I get flamed in the comments, before you dislike this video, how about you check out the list first, because we do have some spice on the side. And yeah, I'm playing it as interestingly as I can, with some heavy inspirations elsewhere. So we'll talk about it as we kind of go through it. But without further ado, let's get in the profile. Don't forget to smash the like button. Come play in the GG for free with me and Paper YuGiOh. And shout out to Team Grim YuGiOh. Let's get to it. Alright guys, starting off with the obvious stuff, we're going to run through it real quick. We had 2 copies of Eldlich the Golden Lord. You don't play 3. Playing 3 is just objectively incorrect. We're going off of Stephen J. Trifanowski logic here. There's no reason to play more than 2. If you're playing 3, you're doing it wrong. I think that's pretty simple to say. Having this card in your hand is atrocious, because the things that you want in your hand are trap cards. It's pretty simple. And I also do main deck 1 copy of the Lord of Heavenly Sky Prison. The other 2 on the side, I'll spoil that right now, because you need to be playing all 3 of them. I just chose to main deck 1 because I wanted room for more trap cards. It's pretty much as simple as it gets, but I did still want to have the option of having him in deck in case something happened to my Lords, in case I wanted to apply more pressure, things of that nature. If I drew it, that was great. If I didn't, so be it. You don't have to fear the blowout spawn trap cards that much going into game 1, but you need to be prepared going into games 2 and 3. And this card is pretty clutch dealing with DPEs, so I can see a strong reason wanting to main deck more copies, and I think you could totally get away with it, but I also don't want to clog and have, you know, ever have the chance of having 2 copies of this card in my hand, especially game 1 when it's so important, even when you lose the die roll, to have trap cards. So again, that's a pretty good general gist right there. Let's move on to the only spell card we play, which is Triple Pot of Extravagance. Yo, check out that nice common, bro. From the Albaz structure decks. I legitimately did not own copies of this card for the longest while, and I'm like, oh sweet, got reprinted the Albaz decks. Perfect. So I cracked open 3 of them. I have another 3 that I'm keeping sealed for my collection. But yeah, there you go. 3 extras. It's the only spell card you play. And now we get on to the meat and potatoes, which is all the purple cards that we play. Lots of traps, lots of traps. This is going to be a quick deck profile because I don't have to explain combos for you. But I will explain some of these choices. Triple Scarlet Sanguine, there's nothing to explain there. Triple Conquistador, of course, it's the stronger of the 2, objectively speaking, but they're both really, really good. You pop whatever you need to pop. That's what it comes down to being. Don't forget it's only face-up cards, but, you know, how often is that really coming up? You know what this card does, I'd hope. And we got 2 copies of the YuGiOh. I think a very strong case could be made to play 3 of this, and I could easily be convinced to play 3 of the YuGiOh, because it's really good to chain to the branded in red. It's super clutch to banish the target there, so we want, I think banishing is actually really big right now, so I think maybe going into a future event, if I were to continue playing this deck, which, you know, it was kind of just a more for fun kind of thing to switch it up, I would probably play 3 of this, and it's good to have a deck like this in your arsenal to kind of play around with. Yeah, going forward, probably would do triple YuGiOh like my buddy Chris Bruce. Shout out to my boy, the Magical Musket God. That's it for the Eldlich traps. Moving on to other traps, I'm going to go through Trap Trick and Trap Trick targets first. So I'm only playing 2 copies of Trap Trick in the main. Some people choose to play 0 of this. but I think Trap Trick's really important for filling in the blanks for whatever card you need it to be, which is pretty clutch. So, of course, we're playing a lot of other normal traps to go with it, but I do choose to play the 2 copies of Trap Trick. And the worst comes to worst, they can be side-out slots. Moving on, I got triple copies of Torrential Tribute. Torrential Tribute was huge. There's a lot of times where I had Despia players, or branded players, whatever you want to call them, play into it. Phantom Knight player play into it. It's stupid clutch how good this card is. And again, it's also searchable off Trap Trick. And for those of you who don't know, Torrential Tribute plus Solemn Strike is an FTK. Even going second, it's like one of the best board breaker combos you can open. Moving on from there, we've got triple copies of the Dogmatic of Punishment. This was good. It's really good against the Adventurer cards because you can knock off the token and the spell card. And also deal with the Draco back. So basically, after they search their Griffin Rider, re-equip the Draco back to the token, you resolve punishment, popping the token, getting that out of there, and then using the Entis to pop the Adventure's continuous spell. And that puts you in a good place because you really want to make sure you don't have to deal with that Draco back for the duration of the game. So punishment is really good there. One thing I thought about doing though is cutting this down to 2 copies and then playing a 3rd copy of our next card, which I think would have been pretty big because of the amount of Despia branded type decks that I played against. 2 copies of Dimensional Barrier in the main. Again, this is something that Triff used to do back when Sword Soul first came out, and it was a huge, good meta call. Right now it's the same thing, only you're calling mostly against Synchros, but hey, there's still a lot of Sword Soul players out there as well. That's why I think I would play 3 of this and only 2 punishment going forward. But I played 2 for the event, so that's what I'm showing you. Just something to think about, food for thought going into future events, or if you're going to play this deck in an event. Another card I would consider beefing up 100% was 2 copies of Ice Dragon's Prison. I think this is another one you could get away with playing at 3. But again, I want to have the Trap Tricks to be tradable for whatever I needed. So if you want to cut the Trap Tricks, you could do triple D Barrier and triple Ice Dragons. But I thought having the Trap Trick was kind of important to be able to trade for whatever you needed. Just flagging that there. We're keeping versatility rather than maxed out ratios. Moving on to our continuous traps, aka our floodgates. Triple copies of Skill Drain. I don't think I need to explain this. You drain the skill out of the game and you flip this up. Smart players can play around / through it, but there's a lot of ways you can punish other people as well. And if you play it correctly, then you should be winning. It's pretty simple. You have to be strategic when you're activating Skill Drain. When there's either Adventurer cards in play or there's a DPE in play, you got to be careful about that stuff, guys. Just warning you. Moving on from there, we got triple copies of Goes in Match. This is the best floodgate of the format. Hands down, you can't change my mind. This card is insane. You can lock them under the attributes of the Adventurer cards. You're playing against Sword Soul, you can lock them into whatever attribute they summon first, and then, like, it's just silly strong. It's silly strong. There's so many different attributes running around. Against Prank Kids, that was another one of the logics, right? We wanted to be ready for the Prank Kid deck, especially coming out of the YCS, and I didn't play against a single darn Prank Kid. I'll talk about that at the end of the video when I talk about the matchups. Dude, I didn't play against any Prank Kids, and I was trying to be ready for it. Anyway. You'll see more on the side deck too about what I mean about being ready for the Prank Kids. But yeah, oh my goodness, how frustrating. But moving on from the good old Goes in Match. I've got 2 copies of Rivalry of Warlords to accomplish a similar purpose. Not as good going for the type rather than the attribute. The attribute is the big one for me. But type can be really strong as well. Again, it's another good one to lock with the Adventurers. You have to be careful about the Draco back. With the same as all your floodgates, you have to be careful. You have to respect the Draco back. And you have to be careful about the DPE too. But another good thing, and this is a point that Stephen J. Trifanowski makes very well as well, is that you have to have your floodgates. These are also your going second cards. You combine them with a Skill Drain or with a Solemn Strike, and you can use them to break boards playing through negates because there's no monster effect negate that can deal with a counter trap. They're also really strong against DPE type boards when you're pairing them with a Lord of the Heavenly Prison in games 2 and 3. So that's why it's important to have those brought in games 2 and 3. Moving on from there to our counter traps, we've got triple copies of the Solemn Judgment. I was main decking Judgment for this because I just wanted a blanket protection type card, a card that was really stupid strong going first, something that I could hit whatever I needed to hit. So obviously I was doing this, and since I wasn't maining more Lord of the Sky Prisons, I wanted something a bit more versatile, something that was a purple card that could hit whatever I needed to hit. So that's why we put in the Judgments. It worked out pretty well for me for the most part. There are times when you're going to be going second that you want to take this card out for more impactful side deck cards, and we'll talk about that when we get to the side deck. But yeah, overall it performed well. And then finally, triple copies of Solemn Strike. You have to play this. This card's insane. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of cards that this combos with where it becomes an FTK. And of course I joke when I say an FTK, but you guys know what I mean, hopefully. That's it for the main board. It's 40 cards even, which felt weird to me as well. After playing 50 card Drytron for a while now. or at least over 40 card Drytron. Playing a deck that was an even 40 was definitely interesting for me. I think there's a lot of people who thought I was playing like Flunder or some crap when they asked how many cards were in deck, and I'm like, oh yeah, 40. Activate Pot of X Draft. Even though I think most of them move on to Prosperity. Regardless, let's get into the, let's do the extra deck real quick, because there's not too much to talk about here, and we should run through it pretty quick. We've got 2 copies of the Link Spider, which is absolutely mandatory. It pairs with your Eldlich traps. Of course, you really only need to see 1 Eldlich trap card to get the engine going and rolling, which is really important. You want to make sure to get that engine online as early as possible, and having Link Spider in your extra deck helps allow that. We also play the 1 copy of Omduke, so we're technically playing 3 targets total that can tag out your trap cards as 1 card. Just remember that if you have Rivalry or you have Gozen face up, you're not going to be able to tag these out, so you got to be a bit more strategic about how you're using that, whether you're sending it off of Lord, whether you're torrentialing with one of the trap cards on the field. You just got to think about it. Like, you got to think your plays super ahead in advance when you're playing a deck like this, which is so weird to say. But yeah, that is the case of a control player. People who insult control players and say they're mindless fools, I actually strongly disagree. I think a deck like this does take a significant amount of skill. It's just a different kind of skill than combo. Moving on, we're playing 2 Charmers. I played 1 Dark and 1 Lina. So Dark is makeable with the Lord of the Heavenly Prison plus any other card. You just need the 1 Dark monster. And Lina is makeable with Lord, with your trap cards. This one's a lot easier to make. And this one objectively comes up more and is definitely more mandatory than the Dark. I think Dark I probably would have cut for something else. Just being honest, because I don't think I summoned it 1 time. There's 1 time I almost summoned it and then didn't end up doing it because there was a skill drain on the field. I was just going to use to clear off bodies and then steal a opponent's Dasher out of their graveyard, but I didn't need to do it because skill drain was on field, so it didn't really matter. But yeah, they're options. They're cool to have. Of course, the Dark is mostly there, steal DPEs, but you know. Last Link monster I'm playing is 1 copy of the BLS Link. This came up in testing prior to the event, but I didn't get to summon it for the event, unfortunately. You know, it can be a win-con type boss monster against certain strategies. Really strong against the Sky Strikers. Hard for them to deal with. There's a lot of matchups where it's difficult for them to deal with. But, yeah, didn't get to summon it this time around. And obviously it conflicts with skill drain and stuff like that. It's kind of like the 1 boss-ish monster you play in the extra deck. Moving on to Exceeds. We had some good stuff in here. We got 2 copies of Pleiades. Again, in testing, came up a lot. Unfortunately, the event didn't get the opportunity to summon it. You make it with 2 Eldlich traps. I don't think there's any explanation needed there. It's a cool form of interruption that lets you bounce cards, and it's also summonable under Gozen while still keeping your Eldlich traps live. Moving on, we got 2 copies of the Big Gun. Again, Big Gun came up a lot in testing, burning people for game. You can ask my buddy, the Eddie Strom. He got burned for game with the Big Gun. Why am I putting the green one on top? You want the real gun on top. Yeah, look at that guy. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, important to play. You have to play it, whether it be in time, whether it be for game. He is your boy. He's doing 2,000 burn. This guy we also play as well is the Big Gun, the Lieb. The Lieb pairs well with the other 2 guns, and he is our technical only out to the Attic Mr. monster. So we have to be careful with how we choose to play that out, and there are things that let us deal with that, but we have to be careful with resolving Extrav in that matchup or things like that. So we are playing the big old Liebe. And then we are playing the 1 copy of Zeus, if it comes up. It's hard to get into it, but if you can, it's there. Most of these cards get banished for Extrav, just being straight with you. And then the last thing, the pretty important things, is our exclusively punishment targets, the Wind Pegasus Ignister, and 2 Elder Entity Entis. My friend Chris Bruce, who was also playing Eldlich at the event, he made a pretty cool point to me about playing the Farragut, which was kind of cool because you can use it to fix your hand. The logic there is, though, you shouldn't really be bricking anyway. It does let you go 1 more card deep, but its attack is low, so it's not the best punishment target in my opinion. I like having these options a little bit more. And of course, you have any other card in your extra deck can be an option. Sometimes you have to use a gun because the opponent's monsters are big. But yep, that's it for the extra deck, full 15 cards. Let's wrap things up with the side deck and bring this deck profile to a close. Alright guys, wrapping things up, we got the triple copies of the Golden Ball. We've got the good old Sphere mode. You guys know how he works. Dude, I have one of the coolest things, bro. I love how many people, after they see you're playing Eldlich, don't shotgun their DPEs. I was playing against a Phantom Knight player, and I just... biggest Sphere mode on the DPE. I hit off the DPE, I hit off the Griffin Rider, I hit off... I can't remember the last monster he had on his field. It might have been the token that I hit off as well. I hit him for a nice, thick 3-piece sphere mode. It was insane. It was so good. So again, guys, sphere mode is great, and its buddy Lava Golem is here to chill as well. So we play both of those cards as well. I know I got the mismatch rarities here. It's because my third secret rare is kind of beat up, so we didn't want to play that for the event. We played one random DT copy. I also Lava Golem a bunch of people too. There's one guy who I beat exclusively because of Lava Golem and keeping him locked under Gozen. Insane, really cool stuff. Other monsters we're playing, of course, I mentioned this earlier, the 2 Lord of the Heavenly Prisons, the other 2 copies reside in the side. Very important to have access to these cards in games 2 and 3, especially for those DPE matchups. You gotta be ready, you gotta be protecting your back row, and when you see him, you know you're safe. So that's it for the monsters on the side, lots of them because we bring in a lot going second. Another thing that I'll mention is Stephen J. Trifonowski's side decking strategy. When it comes to going second, you want to take out the pot of extrabs when you bring in your lava golems and your sphere modes. The one thing I like to do is, since we're also usually bringing in our Lord of the Sky prisons when we're going second, I like to leave in 1 copy of Pot of Extrab to set off of that Lord of the Sky prison, alright guys? Because it's your best set target for that card in my opinion, because it just gets you 2 more purple cards. So that's the logic I like to use there. And shout out to Chris Bruce for, again, helping kind of inform that decision, and of course Stephen J. Trifonowski. Finally, we've got triple copies of Anti-Spell Fragrance. Oh, that's not finally. Moving on to traps, we've got triple copies of Anti-Spell Fragrance. This was kind of my card to bring in against the Adventurers and a bunch of other matchups, honestly. Striker, there's a lot of decks where Anti-Spell is insane. The problem being, though, and I discovered this fast, is that on its own, it's not very good, because you're not going to be able to kill your opponent fast enough to take super advantage of it, unless, of course, you have like the killer combo of Lord plus Heavenly Prison, or a quick way to double Lord, things like that. You're not going to be able to kill them fast, so they're going to be able to use those spells, which means you're going to have to play really smart around the blowouts. So I think my logic was still failed. I would continue to play this card. I just think it needs to be paired with something to go with it, you know what I mean? And we have something that kind of goes with it in the form of the Heavy Storm Duster, playing 2 copies on the side, which makes a lot of sense. Of course, these kind of go hand in hand to blow out the cards that you force them to set, and you are technically playing 4 copies of this with the 2 trap tricks if you keep them in. But again, I feel like I should be doing a little bit more, maybe playing some other form of blowout. I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you think about Anti-Spell Fragrance? And finally, my hot tech. This card came up a ton of times in testing and at the event. Debunk. For those of you who stuck around at the end of the video, you've been rewarded to hear about this insane trap card. It's strong against prank kids. It's strong against any hand trap. Anyone who tries to Bell or Ash your Sanguine is getting punished. There's so many different matchups where it comes up big time. You can banish Griffin Riders when they're activating and hand a special summon. You can banish some of the Despia cards that activate in the graveyard. There's so many interactions. So, oh duh, you can banish DPEs and Celestials when they're attempting to activate and take them out of the game. It's absolutely insane. So for those of you who don't know what this card does, if an opponent activates an effect of a monster in the hand or in the graveyard, negate and banish. It's a counter trap, so it cannot be responded to unless it's another counter trap. That's what makes this card absolutely insane. So that's it for my Eldlich deck profile, full main side and extra. To round out this video, here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk a little bit about the event in general and why I betrayed the Drytron. So of course, DRYKAGE, you already know, Drytron is my main squeeze, but we had to change things up, and I did do a little bit of betrayal this time playing Eldlich, and I'm going to give you guys 3 reasons why I did that. Reason number 1 was going into the event, I was having a rough time. I was in a bit of a rut with testing Drytron. I was playing my 50 card build, the LoganJYA version, inspired by Jordy's, improved by me, and yeah, you know, it was rough. I kept bricking. I couldn't deal with the amount of times I was getting hand trapped, and my buddy TK, Tom, and I kind of came to agreement, like, we got to play something that's not going to lose to hand traps as hard, something that's not going to care about hand traps. So we're like, okay, let's shift gears. Let's give this deck a try. It won't take too much effort. We can kind of just run with it. So that's what I ended up doing. That's reason number 1. Reason number 2. I was not super familiar with the branded Despia strategy. I'm just going to be honest with you. I wasn't ready. I came into it not ready. And that's not a good way to be, especially when you're going into a big event, a 10-round event, mind you. So I wanted to play a deck where I thought I could disrespect it a little bit more. It did come up big time. Skill drain was huge when I saw it against those matchups. The floodgates were pretty big too if I played them properly. So yeah, it was a good meta choice in that situation. And then finally, to close it out, reason number 3. I talked about my problems with Drytron going into the event. I talked about the meta choice of choosing Eldlich. The last thing was not wanting to deal with some of those obnoxious matchups. I'm just talking in general here. Like, I wanted to really, really disrespect things like Prank Kids and like Flunderies when I lost the die roll to them. And you want to know the craziest part? I didn't play against either one of those decks. I legitimately dodged every Prank Kids player and every Flunderies player, which is the complete opposite thing that happened to me when I was at the regional before this in Pennsylvania, where I got 22nd. I literally got one place worse this time round. So my finishing record was 7-1. I lost the final round, which would have had me, if I had won it, I would have been in the top 8, so it was very unfortunate crushing defeat at the end there. But it's against my boy CJ, who you probably already saw the deck profile for. If you didn't, go check out the video on my channel. I'll just do a quick highlight reel of some of my favorite matches. I played against, so one of my losses I have to contribute to 100% a time stalling Phantom Knight player. It was really unfortunate. He did stall me for time at the end, and it was very frustrating. So that one kind of bummed me out, and that should have been a win. It was 100% a win, but he unfortunately stalled me for time. Outside of that, my other loss was to CJ, which is 100% legitimate. And I think a tie I had was with another Despia player in one of the earlier rounds, because I didn't really know, I had to read so many cards, and it was unfortunate because I wasn't ready for it. Who else did we play that was a notable matchup? My fastest match of the day was playing against the Phantom Knight player who I sphere moded, which was fun. It was definitely funny. That was a quick one. In my Despia matchups, I tied one, I won two, and I lost one. I played against 4 Despia decks. I played against a lot of them. I also played against a lot of Phantom Knight. I don't know what the deal with that was. And I played against a lot of weird stuff, matchups that I wasn't ready for. I was trying to be ready for Flunder and Prank Kids, and I didn't run into those decks. So it was kind of unfortunate that I built my deck to beat those strategies, and then I didn't end up playing against them. But hey man, I mean, I think the matchups that I did run into, I still had a pretty strong setup against. And it worked out in my favor for the most part. I mean, the ending setting of, you know, still being in the top 32 is decent. It's not like a legitimate top 8 counts for regionals. But hey, man, it was a 10-round event. Not a terrible performance, especially considering that I really almost never play this deck. And I was adjusting into a meta with a control deck. You want to have knowledge of every single deck. And I didn't really know what the Despia cards did. So I think overall, performed pretty well. I think it was a fun tournament. I would absolutely say that it was a good time. I'll definitely continue to play Eldlich on the low from time to time, but next event, you already know we're playing Drytron, baby, best deck. Come on, listen, I love you, Golden Lord, but get out of here, chump. Get out of here. We're playing Drytron next time, guys. You already know. So be sure to smash that like button. We also got a top 8 deck profile from one of the most insane Drytron decks I've ever seen. It was branded Drytron. Spoiler alert. So if you want to see that list, be sure to smash that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. That's all I got today. LoganJYA signing off. Have a great day. I'll see you chumps later. Peace. 心の隙間